Hello again, welcome to the live stream and live event, S&OP Vendor Day, live in the Netherlands, in Utrecht, but also online in Airmeet. We continue with our great day about how to innovate with all kind of tools for S&OP and IBP. Online, you have the luxury also to choose from other vendors, also from John Galt and Jarvis in parallel sessions at this moment. Luckily, it will be recorded. For the people here in the room, you have to stick with this presentation, but luckily enough, you will have an interesting pitch and a powerful pitch about the application of digital and AI for S&OP and IBP, and it will be presented to you by these persons from 09, Koen Jacobs and Joao Franklin Gouveia. All right, thanks. So Koen and colleague, please join the stage and present me the solution of 09.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Martijn, and welcome everyone once again. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is João Gouveia. I'm originally from Lisbon, Portugal. I've been with 09 for now 2 years, and I'm responsible as an account executive for the Benelux region. So I do that across industries, and today we'll speak a little bit about what we've been seeing in the market in terms of trends, right? But also how can digital and AI be applied to that to transition companies from what we call traditional operating models to new digital operating models. Koen?
Thank you, Joao. My name is Koen Jacobs. I'm an industry VP at 09 Solutions. What we will do today is share a little bit of kind of the trends that we see and some things that we see in the market, and then we will present 2 real use cases to how it comes to life. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so maybe just to put some context, right? So if you look at the native digital companies that we all know, right? So there's a couple of things that from a planning perspective, these companies all have in common. The first thing that we see is these companies all directly engage with the end consumer. So we all know Amazon. Amazon understands what we're likely to buy. They shape our demands based on their availabilities. They understand what's happening in the market, what social media tweets have kind of influence on our buying behaviors. So they have this market model, but also consumer model, and they engage with us directly. That's the first thing. The second thing that these companies have in common is they understand what's going on in their supply chain. So again, the example of Amazon, they know in real time what's sitting in which warehouse and what is in transit and what is sitting at their suppliers. And the third thing that they all do is they are able to connect that. So they're able to, based on supply, decide how to shape our demand. So what are they going to present to us on the website? How are we going to shape our behavior to fit that supply? So those are the common things, and we know all of that. Now, if you look at when we talk to our customers, everybody is affected by that. And there's a couple of things that we see, and let me talk you through one of our clients, which is a large footwear and apparel company. And there's a couple of things that drove them on their digital transformation journey in terms of IBP with 09. The first thing was always on. So whereas historically they would make shoes and sell them through stores, they're starting to sell online. But even more important, they started to engage through an app directly with the end consumer. So they were able to understand what's happening with the consumers, what are the trends, how are they interacting, when are they running, when do shoes wear out. So that changed the way they interacted with our client, but also it's a huge opportunity. The second thing is the product complexity. So the product got sensors that would connect with the app to help training plan, but it gives a lot of information as well. The second thing is that consumers want to have unique products, like a shoes in a certain color with a certain design. So having this batch size of 1 is another complexity, which is a huge opportunity, but a complexity from a supply chain and decision-making perspective. The third thing is demand volatility. Obviously, with COVID, instead of going to the gym, we started to run, so that's a shift. But also, some tweets on the internet affect, let's say, the demand for certain shoes. So those are examples that they want to be able to sense much earlier and capitalize upon. The fourth topic is multi-tier supply chain. So when you think about shoe production, it's typically produced by contract manufacturers. And what they were seeing is they were seeing supply issues too late, actually when it was too late. So they went on a journey of having multi-tier supply chain visibility, not only with the contract manufacturers, but also with their suppliers. So when there is a shortage in raw material supply, they sense that early and they decide actively what are we going to produce to fulfill our strategic objectives, like market penetration or fulfillment or profitability. So that's the context of one company that we went on a journey on, and that drives for the need for new digital models. Now, if you look at that, where are most companies that we talk to today, right? So typically, they're in a phase where they have process automation in place. And typically, there is siloed data in various different places in the enterprise, which is very ERP-centric, and there's a departmental focus. So there is sales, supply chain, procurement, finance, marketing, which are all working in silos, and there's a fixed cadence in terms of making decisions. And what we see is most companies want to make a shift to making decisions based on big data. So collecting the market data, collecting the data from the enterprise and sitting in different data sources, and using AI, ML analytics to make better decisions, as well as integrated end-to-end decisions. So from your customer to your sales, supply chain, connecting the dots. And all of that more real time and always on. So that's kind of the shifts that we're seeing, and that drives the need for a new digital platform. Now, still we see that companies agree that improved S&OP is a priority. When we talk to executives, they all agree, but there's also the challenge that they see it as a big step. It's a big change. It touches upon all the departments in the organization. It touches upon sales, finance, marketing, supply chain, procurement. And that's a big step, and that's the biggest challenge. So when we talk to our clients, we often get the question, okay, but how do we get from where we are today to where we want to be? And that's where, with our platform, we have a unique approach. And let me share a little bit about that, and then let's go into a couple of use cases on how that came to life. So what we typically see is it's a transformation journey, and you take it in steps. And we go use case by use case but the ability to connect all the dots that we were just describing is there. So if you look at the O9 platform, we refer to it as a digital brain. It has the ability to connect with the outside world. So as it's a cloud platform, we can take in data from external drivers, from your enterprise systems, from your supply chain, your consumers, your products, IoT data. And we are able to connect to all of that and collect the data. But having that data is not enough, right? So from the data, you need to make a knowledge model. That's what we refer to. So for example, making a market knowledge model, which understands your company in the context of your competitors, in the context of the market trends. And that's the first use case that's on the slide. So understanding real-time market knowledge and have the ability to translate that, to contextualize that to your enterprise. That's the first thing that we help clients with. Once you have that, that allows you to improve demand planning and demand forecasting using AI, ML, taking the advantage of leading indicators. So for example, what's the trend in the market? Obvious things like weather trends that could affect, for example, CPG companies. Seeing what your competitors are doing in terms of pricing, but taking in all of that information into your forecasting process, focusing on leading indicators instead of historical data. That's the second big use case that we help clients with. And then once you have that, the next step is, okay, but how do I make better decisions? And that's the third use cases that you see. So from that, you create your supply knowledge model, which allows you to create a digital twin of your supply chain, but also a financial model and a revenue model. And with that, you can understand, okay, based on my current demand, my current supply, this is my plan. You can compare that to your AOP, and you can start making gap closure scenarios. Should I fix something with a supplier somehow to solve a supply constraint? Or should I do a promotion in the market to try to close the gap? And running those scenarios, supported by AI, to come up with better decision making is the third big use cases that we see. Those use cases are mostly focused on the midterm. Now, as was discussed this morning, disruption does happen, as we all know. So the fourth use case is Control Tower, which allows you to react in real time to disruptions, but sense disruption early. So sense disruption at the supplier of your supplier. Sense a disruption because you see something happening in your market. And bringing that together and allowing you to then understand what is the consequence of that disruption to my supply chain and supply plan is a third big use case. And what's really important there is the post-gaming as well. So a disruption has happened. What do I learn from it, and how can I avoid and be ready for a similar disruption in the future? That's a fourth use case. And the fifth use case is digital IBP. So bringing together finance, commercial, supply chain forecasts on one single truth, and having the ability to run scenarios online in a meeting. So have no more slides, no more Excel, but run meetings on the platform and have the ability to even in the meeting do what-if scenario planning, so real-time scenario planning, to speed up the process and to increase the speed of agility and decision making. So those are the 5 key use cases that we see that we're solving with our clients at the moment as they go into a digital transformation. Maybe, Joao, I would like to ask you to just bring this to life with a couple of real-life customer examples, please.
No, absolutely, and thanks, Koen, for the theory. I think what's important now is that we go for some practicalities, right? And we show, some of the current customers we have. I'm bringing you today 2 very cool stories, at least from my perspective. Let's start with a large beauty company, which we are now working for around 3 years. This company had a few challenges, right, before starting working with O9. Their main challenge was exactly as Koen just described. They have this inability to work in one single source of truth across departments, right? So think of marketing, sales, supply chain. All of these were done in silos, right? And then the truth was not a single truth, but then each of the departments has their sort of vision, and then there were naturally conflicts within that. The second challenge that they had, they ended up destructing a lot of inventory. Because naturally they have their products with shelf life, and they were not able to maintain current stocks of their products. So we're helping with that. The third thing I wanted to mention, and actually that's the story we will talk about today, is exactly on scenario planning, right? This company didn't have the ability to create scenarios, right? What if my demand is X, but also what if my demand is Y, right? How will my supply chain behave for these different demands? How will they respond, right? And also, how will then that be linked to the financial side of things, right? What's then the impact of each of those scenarios in my gross margin, right? In other KPIs that I want to improve, service levels, OTIF rates, all that, right? So O9 is helping them now within these areas. I think that goes quite linked with the use cases that Koen just described. And the story here is that when COVID hit, we were already working with this company, right? So it's naturally, as you can imagine, a company that one of their main channels was the duty-free at airports, right? Now, from day to night, that had to be completely shut down because, people stopped traveling, airports went into lockdown, and then they had to shift all their products from airports, which was their main channel, to e-commerce and other channels, right? So that required quite advanced capabilities when it comes to stock, inventory optimization, but also scenario planning, demand accuracy, and all that. What are some of the improvements? I listed here a few improvements. So their forecast accuracy was improved by 22% overall, right, across their SKUs. What's also important is that they felt that their planners started to be more productive, right, because they actually started focused on what were exceptions rather than that manual sort of Excel-based work that they were doing before, and they felt that the productivity was actually increased by 80% of the people. Then the last thing is really the reduction of non-standard costs. So let's think of logistics expedites, right? If you have your stock at the right location at the right time, you then don't have to do an air shipment or a cross shipment. Linked again to these also short-term disruptions that you might have in your supply chain. So these are sort of key areas where we help them, and we are still helping. The second story that I was
going to say.
Go ahead, Sun, go ahead.
Right now, the challenge is how will the market pick up, right? So how will things move back, and to which extent, right? So that's the other part that we're now working with them to identify what are drivers that we see in the market and how can they use those external drivers to better predict how airports are opening up, for example. So past historical data is not giving any insight in that. So we help them with those leading indicators to understand what's likely to happen. And of course, that's something that you do together. But having that ability to have a market model, which actually allows them, as Joao was saying, to focus on the outcome of that and the exceptions, that's what we're helping today.
Yes, and I think the second story that we have for you today, it's really linked with these external drivers of demand, right? How can we get a perspective not only at the historical sales of this customer, but also at external drivers affecting their demand, right? And people tend to think, and this is actually, by the way, a sort of a CPG/retail company, it's a large coffee corporation, but people tend to think that external drivers can only be applicable to consumer goods products. We have a couple of examples of other companies we work in more the discrete manufacturing, the process industry sector, where we are actually connecting with a variety of external drivers, and we see that their forecast was actually improved by quite a lot by connecting with those. But let's go to this story, right? So large coffee corporation, what were sort of their main challenges? As you know, they have their baristas. Their baristas were focusing most of their time on replenishment, ordering, and planning activities rather than at customer-centric activities, right? Exactly because they were doing these activities, especially in Excel spreadsheets, right? They were not focusing on exceptions, and that create a lot of inefficiency within the company. The second point on challenges is that they were not looking at external drivers in the market, right? They were looking at past sales. Now think of this company, right? They have more than 10,000 stores in the US and Canada, right? We're working with those stores. Naturally, what's really important for them is that they start understanding what kind of external events are happening around the stores that will drive some different demand across their stores, right? So think of a football game, think of a concert, think of a graduation at some university around. That will definitely drive a lot of attendance to their stores, right? They were not counting with these, right? So they had all days the same stock levels, right, from their products. And then if there's a graduation, they will just stock out very, very early on, right? If there's like bad weather, for example, right, we also connect with weather, then people tend to drink more cappuccinos, right? If their sun is shining, people tend to drink more frappuccinos, for example, right? So these kind of things are very important to know what type of products, right, you should be having in stock at certain days, weeks, months, and so on, right? So we've been helping them with this. I think in terms of many improvements with them is really a reduction both in dollars and volume of the food waste that they have, right? Because what ended up having a lot, and you can imagine for a coffee corporation, milk, it doesn't last that much. So in their case, food waste was a big thing. By having the right stock, by taking into account all those events, they were able to reduce that by quite a lot. Second point is really on the improvement assortment planning, right? So they were able to really, given that they were working in the whole country, US, where is actually bad weather now? Where is the sun shining? How can we shift our stock related to the different beverages we sell to those locations? And then the third point is linked to the first challenge I mentioned on the baristas, right? The baristas are now more willing to develop the value-added activities to their customers, right? Rather than, spending some time on planning, because actually that's not their job. So again, similar to the previous use case we have, they are now focusing on exception, and because of that, they are being able to be more customer-focused, and the company is having overall better results. Right, so those are the two use cases that I wanted to share with you. Within O9, we are now working across industries, right? I think these use cases are the ones that people tend to relate the most, as they are really customer focused. There are a couple of others, right? We work with a lot of companies in the industrial sector, the automotive sector, but also machinery and so on, right? In the process industry, the same, pharma, chemicals, oil and gas, and so on. So if you'd like to know more about any of other use cases or how we are helping companies, just drop me a note. I'll be happy to share more materials. The presentation itself can be shared with you if you wish to. And if there are any questions, can go for them as well.
Yeah, thank you, Joao. For me, the key takeaways are have a vision on what you would like to achieve and start with concrete use cases to get there. And that's what we see clients are doing. O9 is a cloud platform, so it's perfectly suited to do that. And it's really exciting to work with customers to solve these problems. So looking forward to discussing.
Koen, Joao, it's quite interesting to see that you have great examples of leading indicators, so how to apply it. And I'm very curious to see in the near future what kind of leading indicators will pop up that will have a major influence both on the demand and supply side. So that's to make an inventarization, what are the leading indicators to what extent, and then we can learn from that.
Yeah, and what we are seeing right now, and Joao helped me with the exact numbers, but we're building kind of the number of indicators that we have standard available in the platform. Where are we today?
We are now around 1,000 indicators that come directly from the platform, but we can also plug in, any external indicators. So if we talk to a specific company that tells us, hey, you should look at that, then we can also look at that as well and integrate that into the forecast.
And what I'm seeing is that as our discussions around this field specifically evolve, the fact that we see these indicators that some of these customers ask us to add, they become relevant for other customers that are already on the platform or evaluating. So it's a really interesting discussion as it evolves over time. Yeah.
My comment to economists is that they are working with totally outdated traditional models. So GDP is for me an outdated concept. So basically, we will see in the near future, how leading indicators will tell how the future will look like and how it will interact, so for one thing. And it's also great to hear that your digital brain has an incremental approach where to start. And so because it sounds sometimes overwhelming where to start and how to start with a concrete case study.
Exactly. To complement that, that's a good point, right? So we've seen a lot of companies that are still running their Excels and they want to jump directly to leading indicators of demand. Well, that's all fine, but then you might get your statistical forecast right first, right? And then we can exactly have those, we call it Lego blocks on top, and really walk that maturity journey with you, not only on the forecast, but also on the other areas.
I was wondering, having so much insight about leading indicators, do you expect that you will be publishing the effect of leading indicators, or is that secret knowledge? Because I can imagine that if we have a library of leading indicators, and I can imagine other vendors have a similar kind of insight in leading indicators, then we will drive forward, a massive flow of better understanding what's leading to what.
Yeah, no, I think so, right? So as we will evolve and more customers come online, we will actually be able to see which ones are giving the biggest correlation, right? I think also it's really dependent on the industry that you're in. You should probably break it down per industry or per industry category, or something like that. But I do think we will be able to provide insight back to the market indeed and what works.
All right. Thank you for this, these answers and this great story about leading indicators and your digital brain. And I invite people to learn more from you when in the booth or connect in another way. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now we will continue. We still have another break. So I would suggest that you will grab a coffee, have some water, and stretch your legs. So you can go outside for a few minutes. And we will be back at 2:15. And then we have the final pitch for this day by another great, cool vendor. And afterwards we continue with the keynotes on stage. So thanks for now, and I will go online in a lounge for people who want to talk to me digitally. Thanks for now, and see you later.